My name's Adam Washabeck. I'm a wilderness ranger on the Bitterroot National Forest out of Stevensville Ranger District. I do a lot of trail work. I'm a packer, a blaster, a rigger. I teach a lot of crosscut saw, a lot of axemanship, and these days a little bit of chainsaw work as well. But trail work dictates my job. My motivation for teaching a lot of this is we can become fantastic with a little bit more education and that thought that goes into a Sawyers mental toolbox. They have a lot of physical abilities already, but it's looking at the entire situation and thinking, how can I do this and what will make it the easiest, simplest, and safest way.
No matter what you're doing out there, whether you're limbing, bucking, or any task, no matter how simple, you need to think. You need to pay attention to what's going on in your physical environment, and you need to pay attention to what's going on in your brain. Follow the saw techniques we're going to give you, but they're not any good if you're not thinking. We can teach you anything in the world about saw operations, but if you're not paying attention, if you're not thinking, this is where you get hurt. And this is no place to get hurt. In the next couple of videos, we want to introduce you to some concepts that we, your peers, have been using for the past couple years. While these concepts are not new, we found that the way these folks at Switchback present them, they make a lot of sense. Give them a try, and after trying them, I think you'll realize they work.
My name is Stephen Falk, and I'm the founder of Switchback. So, what is Switchback and why do you care? Well, Switchback actually was started by industry to help Sawyers like yourselves become safer and more mentally tough. Switchback has helped reduce fatalities with Sawyers. So how do we do that? Believe it or not, we do it by helping people understand their thoughts, because it all starts there. So maybe you're sitting in the back row and saying, hey, I'm mentally tough already. Here it is. This is how we define mental toughness. One is being able to understand your thoughts. Massive. Number two, to be able to manage your memories. Some of you may not want to be doing that, but it's key. Number three is knowing when you're in team or out of team.
Mental toughness requires that we all become aware of and monitor our thoughts, understand how memories can put us at risk, learn to manage our memories and our thinking, understand and work in team. In this first module, we'll introduce some of the ways to become aware of your thoughts and what it means to be in team. In Module 2, we'll talk about how to manage these. Here's the first tool and concepts, the Switchback brain.
We divide the brain into two areas, very simply. The front of the brain and the back of the brain. So let's talk about the front of the brain. The front of the brain was all your rational, wise, mature, life experience lives, and where you can access that in pretty full capacity. So obviously, if you're in the front of your brain, you're going to deliver the best product at a consistent level, even under pressure. Now, if it was that simple, that would be great. It's more complex than that. The front of the brain we put onto a continuum. We say on one side of the continuum is your thoughts are too passive, so you're not engaged enough, you're not owning the moment.
And passive people have to monitor themselves in order to engage.
On the other side of the continuum is you're too aggressive. Now you're too hot. And now your thoughts are like clouded by ego and like, who needs a team?
And aggressive people have to monitor themselves to make sure they're not overstepping.
And so even when you're in that rational part of your brain where it's like you're clicking on all cylinders and you actually are accessing memories that are going to make you very successful, still there's a level of discernment that's necessary. Am I too passive? Am I too aggressive? Am I in the zone? So that's the front of the brain. The front of the brain is like a valley floor. Up above are two mountains, the flight side and the fight side. So you're running your saw, you're under pressure, it's all good. That's good stress, good adrenaline. But then something happens, either subconsciously, unconsciously, or something actually happens in your physical world that creates an upset. What happens then is you actually start getting chatter from the back of your brain. So your front of the brain is trying to focus on the task at hand. The back of the brain starts going, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? We call that switchbacking, and you switch to the flight, to the fight, to the flight, to the fight.
When you ping in the back of your brain, adrenaline starts flowing, and with it, increased heart rate, increased reactivity, decreased awareness, and the ability to take in additional information. As a consequence, decreased quality of decision making.
This is a massive issue for anyone that's ever run a saw. This is a massive issue for anyone that's tried to be in a relationship. This is a massive issue if you've ever tried to raise a kid. So this is a universal issue. It's just huge for Sawyers because you have to manage this on the fly.
We were filming Todd cut down some trees. It became a perfect example of what happens when you're out here working.
Well, I was trying to get these trees to do a certain thing and go a certain way, and it wasn't happening. And I had several tries doing it and couldn't get them to do what I wanted them to do. I was getting really frustrated and embarrassed. Just that frustration is something you got to manage it. You're already in this state of mind where you can't get the next tree to go better. And then you're just spiraling. You're just, oh, and I'll just cut one more. The next one will go better. I'll redeem myself on the next one. And you're just going down.
So it'd be awesome if you could just live in the front of your brain in that middle zone, but it's not realistic. Sometimes the circumstances you're in pushes you out of that zone and into passivity. So mental toughness means you have to recognize that and push it back in. So let's say you're running your saw, the saw pinches. It happens all the time. But when the saw pinches, for most of us, we get this adrenaline rush that says, holy, now I'm in upset condition. So it's the flight-fight response. What's the first thing you're gonna do? It is. You're gonna look and say, did anybody see me do it? Is that fight or flight? That's the fight response. And then what's the second thing you're gonna do? You're gonna pull in that saw like you've never pulled before.
That's the fight response.
It doesn't make any rational sense because the rational part of your brain goes, hey Steve, forget it. This thing is pinched. But the irrational part of your brain goes, Steve, you just screwed up. Everyone saw it. Sometimes you're too hot, you're too full of ego, you're full of pride, you get too excited. You need to actually calm yourself down, recognize it, think about your thoughts, and move back into team. This dynamic is all over our lives. But when you flash up a saw, this dynamic is the difference between success and potential catastrophic failure. I want to give you one more switchback diagram in this module. So it's called the 4 quadrants. It's just a basic square, real simple. It's going up this side here is all the rules and regs in the system. So high in the top, low in the bottom. Going along the bottom side is relationships and team and communication. So low on this side, high on this side. Then we just number them. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let me describe these different quadrants. So if you're in high quadrant 1, it means that you're a rule keeper. You love the rules, you love the system, your saw is perfectly polished and all the rest. But being in 1 means that you're like, stuff first, people last, which means you're not a team player. You know right away how that's a liability. You can actually recognize yourself in that, and you can recognize others. Quadrant 4 on the other side is, man, you're sure fun to be with, but your saw is not maintained, your plan isn't very well executed, and you're kind of reckless. 3, on the other hand, is a depletion of both of those lines, and so you're not organized, and you're also not friendly. That's just pain and chaos. So of course, where's the spot? Where's the target for your brain? Where's the target for the people you work with? It's got to be quadrant 2. So we just draw a big circle around there and say, that's what you're shooting for, quadrant 2. So in the saw world, it's simple. We're asking you to plot yourself and develop the capacity to become expert technicians and expert communicators at the same time. Here it is. Most of us don't get quadrant 2 for free. And most of us can't maintain quadrant 2 all the time. So question from me to you is, when you're not in 2, where are you? Do you become this rule-orientated person? Do you become a, hey, let's just joke around and goof around and cut some corners? Do you become the, let's just go drink? Where do you go? And how quickly can you recognize yourself leaving 2, and how quickly can you get back to 2? That's the game change. Switchback defines team as people that are being mentally tough, they're committed to each other, and they actually have a bit of capacity to actually know each other. Like, if you develop a level of trust with each other, we think that's one of the ingredients to building a world-class team of Sawyers.
And I would also say that it's important for our work because it's necessary to be able to read each other, especially in some of the safety situations. So if you're looking at someone, you can tell they're uncomfortable with the cut they're making. You need to have that background story to be able to read each other.
And the ability, like, trust and care about each other is just the basis for open communication.
And we see safety scenarios in different ways. Some of us think that one situation might be more dangerous than someone else does, but it kind of varies person to person, or we see different things. It's important, I think, that we do a good job of talking to each other about when we see things like that, but we're all not going to see the same thing. Yeah. The important part is communicating.
Yeah. And it might be a space where perhaps I don't see something, and even though I am more active, whereas Amelia, who can tend to be a little more passive, at that point steps up and is a little more active.
It's interesting also to watch that variation within person too, so you can notice, like, when Amelia's more tired, she'll be more like, all right, we really need to look at this and slow down and take that time too. So individual variation is important to recognize as well.
Yeah, we call that team.
Team can also be defined as being in the sweet spot, in the front of your own brain.
First time I ever drew that switchback diagram with the mountains and that valley was at an investigation after a Sawyer like yourself ended his career by having a big snag come down on top of him, pinched a saw in the back cut. But you know what happened next? He switched to the back of his brain. So he was in the zone, but that adrenaline dump that happened when he pinched his saw sent him into the fight response. And he went to flight, to fight, to flight, to fight. And he made a series of decisions that were irrational, which ended his career. There was a Sawyer that had almost identical situation, same kind of snag. He does the undercut, but because he's tuned in and he's in what we call team, when he went to go to do the back cut, he just stopped. And his brain started giving him clues, like warning clues. So he popped his muffs, shut off a saw, and literally backed up like 10 steps, put a saw down, stood back another about 15 steps, and he just waited and he watched. That man was in team at that moment, from our definition. You know what happened next? That tree came down. That's what it means to be in team. So here's the challenge. Get yourself into the front of the brain. Recognize when you're switchbacking in the fight and fight. Make a commitment to being in quadrant 2 and start to really understand your thinking.
Next module, we'll talk more specifically about managing memories and how to recover.